Good morning. Very glad to have each and every one of you here. To say our text for this morning is familiar is an understatement. And yes, we get it in various ways from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And depending on the year and the season and the selection, it sounds a little bit different, but often the same. But Luke's is different. And I would invite you to listen carefully, not so much for what you hear, but maybe in the ways that Luke's account diverges from some of the more familiar. We'll also roll through the whole episode here. I'll be reading from Luke 19, 29 through 44. As Jesus came to Bethphage and Bethany on the Mount of Olives, he gave two disciples a task. He said, "Go into the village over there, and when you enter it, you will find a colt that no one has been ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks, 'Why are you untying it?' just say, 'The master needs it.'" Those who had been sent forward found it exactly as he had said. As they were untying the colt, its owners came to them and said, "Why are you untying the colt?" They replied, "Its master needs it." They brought it to Jesus, threw their clothes on the colt, and lifted Jesus onto it. As Jesus rode along, they spread their clothes on the road. As Jesus approached the road leading down from the Mount of Olives, the whole throng of his disciples began rejoicing. They praised God with a loud voice because of all the mighty things that they had seen. They said, "Blessings on the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest of heavens." So the Pharisees from the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, scold your disciples. Tell them to stop." He answered, "I tell you, if they were silent, the stones would shout." As Jesus came to the city and observed it, he wept over it. He said, "If only you knew on this of all days the things that would lead to peace. But now they are hidden from your eyes. The time will come when your enemies will build fortifications around you, encircle you, and attack you from all sides. They will crush you completely, you and the people within you. They won't leave stone on top of stone within you because you did not recognize the time of your gracious visit from God." The triumphal entry on Palm Sunday is a good deal like a flashbulb exploding in a dark room. You know what that's like, or at least you did. When your eyes are well acquainted to the dark, and just then, somebody says, "I know, it's a great time to take a picture." Or if you got a joker like, well, me, you might have gotten one of those standalone flashes with a test button that you could just sort of hide down beside your leg and blind everybody. It's certainly a surprise, and everybody just sort of gasps with the effort, but You remember the image. Everybody frozen just in time and space and around. But then you also know that just about as soon as the flash goes off, your memory of that vision, even though it's still shadowing on inside of your eyelids, starts to fade. And the darkness is darker still. And that's what I'm comparing Palm Sunday to. As I said, in many ways, let's tell you the triumphal entry is a good deal like this experience. For a shining moment, we see what we expect to see on a day like today. The Sunday school version of "Blessed be the one coming in the name of the Lord." But the hard part about this day, and honestly the hard part about preaching this day, is the fact that it does not last. Not for long. Like a flash, it fades away, and things are almost darker than they were before. It may not be where we want to be, but it is realistic all the same. Truth be told, the scene and surroundings are already foreboding in their aspect and are likely to cast an even deeper shadow as it comes here. If we turn to our cinematic imagination, it'd probably be sort of that brooding blue-gray that scenes sometimes get lit as, that tells you something's about to happen. And that's where we stand in this day. But the challenge of this day is to get that snap image as fresh as possible as we can. And to do that, we need to take a few steps back from the mental image that we each likely carried into this sanctuary this morning and consider what Luke is actually showing us, actually telling us. For instance, were Luke the only gospel available to us, we probably wouldn't be here on Palm Sunday per se. Not sure that if you noticed, but he didn't say a word about palm trees or palm branches. Maybe we'd be celebrating Coat Sunday and cloak. Gone too would be the yelling children. Hosanna doesn't even enter the vocabulary. And we might even have a conversation about crowd size here, because really the only crowd mentioned is those numbered as his disciples. And it's not clear whether it's the select 12 that were always there or the larger entourage that traveled alongside the teacher. This is not the entrance that we know or see it. Our best association of this arrival on the scene is a far more stately affair, more akin to the red carpet that we might see before the Oscars or something like that. Flash dolls, movie stars, people yelling out for an autograph and a selfie. That's how we understand these things. And that's how we envision what's going on here, because that's how we envision what it means to have power and prestige. Making the scene when you know that everyone likes you. But that's not what we have here, and not, I contend, what's actually going on. From the parade on down, this is something different entirely. Jesus rides a colt, not a stallion or even a fully grown horse. We can almost imagine his feet dragging along the road across the patchwork of laid out clothes before him. This scene is much more akin to kids playing dress up than they do a proper royal arrival. Think maybe some guys borrowing their parents' bathrobes from inside and riding on a lawn chair mounted on a couple of skateboards. The declarations of the disciples that distressed the Pharisees so much, lest nature itself takes up the song, is what we have opposition to do for. That's the praise. And we're not sure whether the Pharisees' complaint is about a noise violation or, it's not smart to say these things when Rome is in town. But leading on our Lucan way of thinking, our Lucan way of knowing, and not merely trying to disassemble how we think about Palm Sunday. I think it's really the way that Luke sees it, and the way that we do well to sit with it for at least from time to time too. It's useful for us to remember that there's much that goes on in the Passion narrative, and it's not all sweetness and light. You know that I've been here long enough to know my fondness for the phrase of saying, in order to get to the Easter Sunday sunrise, you kind of have to spend some time in the dark. As much as I like to leap from one to the next, it's just not in the shadows. And this is a shadowy text. The first is what we're given in context. Again, where the story is told and how it's told makes a big difference. Just before this telling, in Luke 19, Luke tells the parable of the three servants and the gift of the talents and how they're invested. A story that we know well from here and elsewhere. But Luke's telling is particularly striking because not only is it, you overcautious servant, you lost everything because you didn't make a good investment. But also there's some commentary about a king, a jealous king. A jealous king who's being confronted by a whisper campaign and who comes back not only to square things up with his servants, but then says, and while we're squaring things up with my servants, let's bring my enemies in here so I can see them beheaded in front of me. And with that, Luke 19 goes right into the triumphal entry with, after he had said these things, he went to Jerusalem. Luke's orderly account of the life and times of Jesus Christ leaves us an image of a ruthless and powerful king hanging in the air right before Jesus commits grand theft cult and enters the capital. And when we hear, blessed is the king who comes in the name of the Lord, we have to wonder precisely what sort of king they might have in mind. And what sort of contrast Luke might be drawing one to the next. You have to wonder, is this the king that they left behind? You have to wonder, is this the king that they might actually be wanting? This sort of demanding, powerful sort of king. Because that's precisely the kind of messianic king that people have been looking for. Luke is the author who, in the first chapter of Acts, will show us that even as late as the day of Jesus' ascension into heaven, 4 days after Easter, even then the people and the disciples are still asking the question about, when is Jesus going to come and take out Rome, smash Pilate and Herod and kick Caesar in the teeth, and to restore the physical kingdom of Israel? If that's how they were thinking after the cross and the resurrection, they surely had something like that in mind on what we now call Palm Sunday. The kind of king that the disciples called a glimpse of in the parables is the same kind of powerful political figure that they had in mind as they announced Jesus' progression of the cult. All of this lends much more context to the tears shed for Jerusalem and its inability to see and understand what actually makes for peace. Jesus is carrying the disconnect between the worldly power of might and majesty and the godly power of sacrificial love on his shoulders, and there was a sure understanding that it would not be understood for what it was. There are few quicker ways to end a party than to introduce somebody sobbing in the corner. But here's the guest of honor doing exactly that. Weeping for want of being understood. There's not much kingly in that. Yet it is the surety of the basic misunderstanding of what it is to actually live within the way of Yahweh, to trust God's hope and God's presence, that makes all the difference. It is the shadow of the darkness and the future it portends. A future we know comes true time and again. And that's what brings Jesus to tears, for the senselessness of it all. This prediction with its graphic realism holds within it the failures of the human expectation to meet up with the divine intention and what reality might look like. Yet notice, once Jesus is done crying, he picks himself up and he makes it clear that the vision is not a happenstance sort of thing that just happens to Jerusalem because she's in the wrong part of town. This was because they could not tell time and didn't have a sense of what Messiah meant. As tempting as it is to say, they just got it right and got all their acclamations and adulation correct, it's simply not the case. Nor is it simply because they saw fit in a matter of days to execute Jesus instead of allow him to continue to be a menace to the peace. Jesus' point at this very moment, in this very celebration, is that they got more wrong than they got right. They had all the wrong ideas of what kind of king Jesus was and how Jesus would accomplish a mission that in the end would have nothing to do with the politics and powers as we know it. Because friends, the gospel is this. In a world obsessed with power and money, with prestige and politics, with manipulation and the end results justifying whatever means necessary, we as Christians are invited to look far more like kids playing dress up than yet another power set. We are invited into the way that Jesus sets, knowing that the kingdom declared without action is not the kingdom at all. Try though we might to make Jesus the strong man that we would love to have, he will not stay in that box. Not then, not now, and not ever. And to be sure, that's what we love to have. And that's what we often try to recreate in Jesus, is the powerful leader that we know and that we expect. But instead we get a servant king who walks forward and knows that the world is changed not from the top down, but from the bottom up. We are invited to the path that invites us and challenges us to but follow and to live a far more different way, and perhaps a far more dangerous way. The more that we turn Palm Sunday into a red carpet gala, the more that we forget that we follow Jesus away from all the carpets, away from the power, away from the notions of my way or the highway, and towards a path that most believe is only a dead end. Like the servants of the parable who received the riches from the king, so we have also been given the riches of this gospel. We dare not squander it or bury it under some spiritual mattress. But likewise, we dare not try to turn the gospel treasure into something that it is not. And so find ourselves like the people of Jerusalem, both expecting and promoting all the wrong things. We are invited only to follow where Jesus leads. You likely didn't come today seeking a Palm Sunday with a tear-stained Jesus. But this too is the Jesus that we follow, and the one that we will take out from here. It's this Jesus that invites us to follow on still, embodying the gospel, different though it may be. This is the reality of the gospel. The costly kingdom is now, and there is no place that we can go in a week or in any time whatsoever that God is not. And our question is, dare we follow? And dare we step forward, anticipating resurrection, even where we least expect it? May we each be given the grace to follow where we may. Amen.